Good afternoon, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I'm going to talk about a kind of a recent Christmas carol. You know, you're talking about something that was created just, say, less than 100 years ago. It's called Do You See What I See? And anybody that looks this up will find a little interesting story there if they read the lyrics. And I want to talk about the lyrics a little bit because I'll tell you what, they're kind of inaccurate. They really are. But before I do, I wanted to say I hope everybody had a good Christmas. I certainly did. I've got this 12 megapixel Kodak Easy Share camera now, and you can probably see me a lot better thanks to it. I don't know why the 7 megapixel was the way it was, but now that we have this, boom. Anyway, what I wanted to say was this. If you look at the lyrics of the song and you say, well, why are you talking about this after Christmas? Well, you know what, New Year's hasn't quite come up yet and it's still the holiday season, so I decided to go ahead and do this. The lyrics first start out by saying, said the night sky to the little lamb. Okay, whoa, wait a minute, this was not the night sky saying this to the little lamb. These were angels up in heaven talking to little lambs and their shepherds, okay? And they weren't just talking, they were singing. Now, first concept, let's erase this out of your mind. Most angels do not have wings, yet they still fly. That's because they hover, okay? And most likely, it is because they possess some natural way of defying the magnetic fields of the planet Earth. Now, this is not totally unheard of when you're talking about Jehovah God, which is a God that is so powerful that he created the heavens and the earth. Now, if he created the heavens and the earth, he created the magnetic field of the earth, so therefore he could biologically infuse angels with the ability to defy gravity. So what the shepherds were seeing was a whole bunch of guys floating up in the air. Now, the reason why they said, well, these angels had wings is because that the only thing that mankind understood in the line of flying, other than hot air balloons, which didn't come around for a lot later, was the concept of wings. They had seen birds that flew. You know, you're talking about all kinds of fowl. They have wings and they fly. That was what they understood, and that's why they made angels with wings. Okay, now there are a few times in the Bible where it is actually mentioned that these particular angels had wings, but more often than not, it is never mentioned really so much in the Bible that every single angel has wings. Okay, that's just a misconception. More likely than not, and let me tell you something, if that were true, then Jesus would have himself sprouted wings when he ascended into heaven. And we all know that didn't happen. So, more likely than not, these angels didn't have wings. They defied gravity. Simple as that. And God infused them with the ability to defy gravity. And let me tell you something. There are demons out there that can defy gravity just as much as angels. The only difference is they don't go up to heaven, okay? They fly in what we call the heavens, but they don't go to the real heaven because God has banished them forever. Alright, so you have a bunch of angels in the sky. They are defying gravity, yet they have no wings, and they have the most angelic voices you've ever heard in your life, and they are declaring the birth of a king. Okay? Now, the next part of the Christmas carol, the little lamb did not have to say anything to the shepherd boy. The shepherd boy could see those angels up there, so he already knew what was going on. So that part of the song is an absolute ridiculous stupidity and should not have been added. Okay, now, said the shepherd boy to the mighty king. Okay, we're talking about King Herod here. Whoa, no. There was no little shepherd boy that went up to the mighty king. No, that never happened. We had magi. Sometimes they're called magi. It doesn't matter whether they're called magi or magi. The point is that these men, and let me tell you, there weren't 3 of them. That's another myth. Okay, scratch that. There were probably more like a dozen, and I'll tell you the reason why. Okay, they're going through the Judean desert. Now, let me tell you something. They had a lot of thieves out in the Judean desert. Okay, so, for one thing, if the event happened like most people believe during the Feast of Tabernacles, you're talking about daytime temperatures in the Judean desert getting to be about 90 to 100 degrees, but in the nighttime, especially the middle of the night, the temperature would drop to about 30, 35 degrees. Okay, so these pictures of these magi, or magi, whatever you want to call them, having these light little garments on, no, that would not have been the case. They would have had some pretty big time garments on to keep themselves warm. Okay, these weren't idiots. Okay, a lot of people say, well, they were just guys. They weren't guys. Okay, these were very smart guys. The word magician comes from these guys. Okay, so they knew all about sorcery and astrology and you name it. These were brilliant men. And they were brilliant enough to know what was really going on in the Judean desert. And let me tell you something, there was enough thieves in the Judean desert that these guys would have protected themselves. These were well-armed magi, or magi, whatever you want to call them. They were well-armed, okay? They had handcrafted swords. And if a thief were to come at them, they would have taken care of that thief in about 2 seconds. Now, not to mention the fact that they were also smart enough, they were magicians, okay? So they would have created a lot of superstition around them, which would have caused these desert thieves to rethink attacking a magi. They would say, oh boy, I don't know that I want to take this, because they could say, I curse you. And these desert thieves believed in that kind of stuff, and so they wouldn't risk getting cursed for the rest of their lives trying to steal from these people. Now you say, well, why would we have these magi so well armed? Okay, let's look at it. These guys didn't have some little teeny tiny box of gold, and another little tiny box of myrrh, and a little teeny tiny box of frankincense. That was not the way. More than likely, they had a big supply of myrrh and a big supply of frankincense, and what they did was they bartered for gold. And they were carrying a lot of gold that night. And I'm telling you what, at least one of their camels was full of gold. And I'm sure one of their camels was full of myrrh, and one of their camels was full of frankincense. They probably bartered that stuff. More than likely. So that all three of those things were very valuable. And let me tell you something, if a thief thought he could get to something like that, he would try. Well, these magi were not stupid. They would probably go to a pack of 12 or 15 of them, well armed, and what they would do is they would keep the camels, and they were riding camels, okay? Some of them may have even been riding horses, I'm not really sure, but some of them were riding camels, some were riding horses. Camels were particularly useful in deserts because you're talking a desert environment, and the camels could hold a lot of water. They wouldn't have to stop at a watering hole all the time to give their horses a drink. So if they had horses, they probably didn't have a whole lot of them. They would probably rely more on camels than horses because they weren't going through a desert at night, okay? And let me tell you something. These magi were not, their attention was not caught so easily. They would look at the stars, and they would look at very specific events, and that would catch their attention. And let me tell you something. God put something up in the sky so powerful it caught their attention. And that takes a lot for a magi. I guarantee you that. And God knew this, so he put a celestial event in the sky so spectacular that these guys couldn't have missed it if they tried. Alright? It's just like with the shepherds. They were sitting there in the fields, and all of a sudden, kaboom, kabang, these angels show up. They're floating around. They don't have wings. They're defying gravity. It got the shepherds' attention, and now they're singing. Okay? So, yes. So, let's redraw the picture. You have about a dozen magi with handcrafted swords and a full knowledge of all kinds of superstition, which they could have performed a curse right on anybody trying to steal from them. Okay? So they were not really afraid of traveling at night in the desert. They were probably with camels and maybe some horses too. I don't know. I wasn't physically there, but I can just about imagine they had a combination of horses and camels. And they were packed down with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So there was a good reason to have handcrafted swords to go through that desert. And they were not idiots. It was these magi that went up to King Herod and told him about the king of the Jews. Well, I tell you, Herod, he put on quite a little facade, but I can assure you that he had no intent whatsoever to let this new king of the Jews live. And that's why he ordered the execution of the babies in Bethlehem. Now you say, well, what? Well, there's really no major account except what's in the Bible of the killing of the kids in Bethlehem. Well, you got to keep in mind, Bethlehem was a small town. It was one of those towns where you could have taken a baseball and thrown it from one end of the street to the other, and you would have gone through the whole town doing it. Okay, it's a really tiny town. You'd have like one main road, and like I say, you could take a baseball, throw it from one end, and it would land on the other end, and that would be the end of Bethlehem. Bethlehem is not a big town. It is now, but at that time it wasn't. So, they probably only had like 20 to 30 babies that were actually really killed. So, in their point of view, it wasn't such a big deal. Matthew recorded because he thought it was a big deal. But other people wouldn't have written about it because, like I said, when you only have 30 babies dying, it's not the way it is today. News reporting back then was not the same as it is today. It wasn't such a significant event. Okay? So that's why a lot of it is missed. But these magi knew. They knew what the king was up to. They're very, very smart people. It was these magi that went up to the king and then delivered the message. And the king put on this facade saying, I'm going to worship this little baby. But these magi knew that the very second they told this king where this kid was, this baby was history. So that's why they refused to tell him and they left. Okay? So, there's your real story. And I wish that they would not make Christmas carols with so many errors. Because it just is not the real story. It's just like We Three Kings. These magi weren't kings, they were sorcerers. Okay? They were not kings at all. They were as rich as kings, but they weren't kings. So, I kind of wish people would not write these kind of Christmas carols because it gives a completely false interpretation of what really happened in Jerusalem at that time. So, what's the final point to this? Let me tell you something. I've been doing an in-depth study of the book of Ezekiel, and I can tell you right now that prophets and rabbis and real ministers, even today, are not well liked. They deliver messages like, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. Let me tell you something. Moses was not a popular guy with the Egyptians. And many of the prophets of Israel were not very popular because they were delivering messages that nobody liked to hear. And let me tell you something. Jesus wasn't popular with everybody. He was not popular with the Jewish Sanhedrin. Because he was standing there telling them they didn't know how to worship God. Stephen himself was stoned for calling the Jewish Sanhedrin murderers for killing the Son of God. That didn't go over too well, I can tell you that right now. The apostles were flogged on a regular basis for proclaiming that Jesus was the Messiah. Some of them were even executed for this. Let me tell you something. The gospel message is popular to millions of people, but on the other hand, there are people in the world that it's not very popular to, and these people are sinister enough to even want to kill you for saying such things. This is not always such a popular message. So, when you see a reverend that's standing there on a pulpit and he is extraordinarily popular and nobody's threatening his life or nothing like that, you have to wonder if he's delivering the right message. Because let me tell you something. When you deliver the right message, even Jesus himself said, the people hated me and they will hate you the same way for talking about me. For talking about the kingdom of God. If you find that nobody hates you, you're not telling them the right message. There are people in this world that hate me enough because of what I tell them, that they want to knock me off. I can tell you that right now. Not everybody likes me. And that's okay. I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm here to tell you how things are. Alright, I think I've kind of gone over this enough. At least now you know the real story behind Do You Hear What I Hear. It's a beautiful little Christmas carol, and I have no real problem with it except the fact that a lot of it is inaccurate. And if you know the real story behind it, you can see these inaccuracies and say, well, you know, maybe we should have a Christmas carol that's a little more accurate to what's going on. It wasn't the night wind that talked to the sheep or the shepherds. It was the Magi who talked to the king, and the king did not like the message. So that last part of the carol where he's saying, well, he was saying that, oh, give this kid gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But on the other hand, he was secretly saying, hey man, we're going to get this kid. He's on my hit list. It's over. So like I said, a highly inaccurate Christmas carol. And I just had to say that. Because if you listen to it and you believe what the Christmas carol is telling you, then you're believing a lie. And that we can't have. I know that's not going to be real popular. I know that some people are going to say, well, you shouldn't say things like that. But on the other hand, check your history out. You'll find out I'm telling you the truth. The truth is not always popular, but it's the truth anyway. Let me tell you something. Poison will kill you if you ingest it. It doesn't matter whether you like hearing that or not. It's the truth. So, I know, you're a fuddy-duddy over Christmas. Well, you know what? Sometimes you have to be a fuddy-duddy to get the more accurate story. The Christmas story is a true miracle. It really is. But if you get it inaccurately, it's a real curse. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.